Most people believe understanding others begins with questions. They think insight comes from talking more, explaining more, asking the right words in the right order. But that belief quietly keeps them blind. Because the truth is this: people reveal far more when they're not speaking. Think about the moments that stayed with you the longest. Not the loud conversations, not the dramatic confessions, but the pauses, the looks that lingered too long, the silence after a question that should have been easy to answer. You've felt it before. That moment when someone says, "I'm fine," but their body doesn't agree. Their shoulders tighten, their eyes look away, their breath changes, and without knowing why, you feel something is off. That feeling isn't intuition, it's observation, untrained but real. Most people miss it because they're busy preparing their next sentence. They're busy trying to be liked, understood, accepted. So they fill the silence. They talk, they explain, they interrupt the very space where truth shows itself. But when you stop doing that, when you learn to stay calm, quiet, and present, something changes. People begin to show you who they are, not because you pressure them, not because you interrogate them, but because silence removes their mask. This audiobook is not about manipulation. It's not about tricks, hacks, or domination. It's about clarity. It's about learning how to see people as they are, not as they present themselves. How to understand intentions without demanding explanations. How to recognize confidence, insecurity, honesty, and tension without a single word being spoken. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The calmer you are, the more information you receive. Emotion clouds perception. Neediness distorts judgment. The urge to respond too quickly blinds you. But calmness does the opposite. Calmness slows time. It sharpens awareness. It gives you space between what you feel and what you choose to do. And in that space, you see everything. You notice how people sit before they speak, how they enter a room, how they react when they think no one is watching, how their energy shifts when a topic touches something sensitive. These signals are not random. They are consistent. And once you learn to recognize them, you stop guessing. You stop overthinking texts. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop wondering what people really meant, because you already know. This skill changes more than conversations. It changes relationships. It changes power dynamics. It changes how safe, grounded, and confident you feel in the presence of others. When you understand people without forcing words out of them, you no longer chase clarity. You attract it. Over the next 60 minutes, you're going to train a quieter kind of intelligence. Not the kind that impresses rooms, the kind that understands them. You'll learn how silence communicates, how the body speaks before the mind decides what to say, how emotional control gives you a natural advantage, not over others, but within yourself. This isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming steady. Because the people who see the most are rarely the ones talking the loudest. They're the ones watching, waiting, letting others reveal themselves. Silence isn't empty. It's full of information. And once you learn how to read it, you'll never listen the same way again. Chapter 1. Why silence reveals the truth. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. Not because it is empty, but because it removes their protection. When words disappear, there is nowhere to hide. From a young age, you're taught that communication is about speaking clearly, explaining yourself, filling gaps. Silence is treated like a mistake, an awkward pause that needs rescuing. So people rush to fill it. They talk faster. They laugh unnecessarily. They offer information that was never asked for, and in doing so, they reveal far more than they intend. Silence is a psychological mirror. When nothing is being said, the nervous system speaks instead. The body does not know how to perform silence the way the mouth performs language. It reacts honestly. Muscles tighten or relax. Breathing shifts. Eyes search for escape or lock into control. Posture collapses or straightens. These reactions happen before thought, before strategy, before self-editing. Words are chosen. Silence is not. That's why silence reveals the truth. When someone is comfortable with who they are and what they feel, silence feels neutral to them. It doesn't threaten their identity. They don't rush to explain or justify themselves. They remain still, grounded, present. But when someone is hiding something, fear, insecurity, dishonesty, or internal conflict, silence becomes pressure, and under pressure, systems leak. You've seen this before, even if you didn't name it. You ask a simple question. There's a pause that lasts just a second too long. Their eyes move away before they answer. They clear their throat. They adjust their posture. Nothing dramatic happens, but something changes. That change is information. Most people miss it because they're trained to focus on content instead of behavior. They listen to what is said, not how the body responds before it's said. They're already preparing their reply, already thinking about how they appear. Silence requires a different kind of attention. It asks you to slow down. When you don't rush to speak, you give the other person time to expose their internal state. You allow the moment to stretch just enough for discomfort or calm to surface. And here's the key. You don't create the discomfort. You simply allow it. This is why silence is powerful without being aggressive. You're not interrogating. You're not accusing. You're not applying force. You're just not rescuing them from themselves. In silence, people project. They fill the gap with nervous explanations, defensive humor, over-justifications, or emotional leakage. Or they do the opposite. Withdraw, shut down, avoid. Both responses tell you something real. Silence strips away social scripts. Words are learned. Silence is primal. Social language is full of rehearsed patterns. Politeness, charm, deflection, storytelling. People know how to use words to manage impressions. They know how to sound confident, caring, intelligent, or harmless. But silence disrupts those scripts. When there's nothing to perform, the mask loosens. This is why emotionally intelligent people speak less, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand timing. They know that the person who controls the pace of a conversation controls the flow of information, and pace lives in silence. When you remain calm and quiet, you're not dominating the interaction, you're stabilizing it. That stability creates contrast. Against your stillness, the other person's reactions become clearer. You begin to notice patterns. Who rushes to fill space? Who grows anxious when not validated? Who relaxes when not pressured? Who becomes rigid when not in control? These patterns repeat, and repetition is truth. Silence also reveals your own internal state. If silence makes you anxious, that's information too. It shows where you seek approval, where you fear judgment, where you confuse being heard with being valued. Learning to sit comfortably in silence is not just a social skill. It's emotional discipline. It trains you to regulate your impulses, to pause instead of react, to observe instead of assume. And when you do that, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop leaking your own information unnecessarily. You stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned access. You stop talking your way out of your intuition. You stop weakening your position by oversharing. Silence gives you back your center. This is why silence is often mistaken for confidence. Not because silence itself is confidence, but because it signals self-regulation. It shows that you are not dependent on constant feedback to remain steady. People feel that, and when they feel it, they respond honestly, sometimes without realizing it. Silence doesn't force truth out of people. It removes the noise that hides it. As you move forward in this audiobook, remember this foundation. Understanding others does not begin with decoding them. It begins with containing yourself. Your calm creates the conditions. Your silence reveals the signal. And once you learn to stay present in quiet moments, you'll realize the truth was never hidden. It was simply waiting for you to stop talking long enough to see it. Chapter 2. The body speaks before the mind. Before a person decides what to say, their body has already reacted. This happens faster than thought, faster than intention, faster than strategy. The mind can rehearse words. The body cannot rehearse instinct. That is why the body always goes first. When something unexpected happens, an uncomfortable question, a sensitive topic, a sudden shift in power, the nervous system responds immediately. Muscles tense or soften. Breathing changes rhythm. The spine adjusts. Weight shifts. Hands move toward protection or control. Only after this does the mind step in to explain. Most people believe the opposite. They think thoughts come first, actions second. But in real human interaction, it's the body that fires the first signal. The mind arrives late, trying to make sense of what has already happened. If you want to understand people without words, this is where your attention must live. Not in their stories, not in their explanations, but in their first reaction. The body is designed for survival, not performance. It does not care how someone wants to be perceived. It only cares about safety, threat, comfort, and control. That makes it brutally honest. A relaxed body tells you one thing. A guarded body tells you another. And these signals appear even when someone is trying to look calm. You'll notice it in small ways. A person says they're confident, but their shoulders rise slightly toward their ears. Someone claims they're open, but their torso angles away from you. They insist they're listening, yet their feet are already pointed toward the exit. These aren't coincidences. They are unconscious disclosures. The mistake most people make is waiting too long. They focus on what comes after the explanation instead of what came before it. But the first movement, the initial shift, is where the truth lives, because it wasn't filtered. Once the mind engages, everything becomes adjustable. People correct their posture. They steady their voice. They choose words carefully. They perform the version of themselves they want you to see. But the body already spoke. Learning to read this doesn't require obsession or analysis. It requires stillness. When you're calm, your perception widens. You stop fixating on meaning and start noticing signals. You notice how someone enters a room before they greet anyone. You notice whether their body expands or contracts in certain company. You notice how quickly they recover from being surprised. These patterns tell you more than any sentence ever could. There's a reason emotionally reactive people miss this information. When your own nervous system is activated, when you're anxious, excited, defensive, or eager, you lose bandwidth. Your attention collapses inward. You're too busy managing yourself to observe others. Calm restores perception. This is why silence and body awareness work together. Silence slows the moment. It gives the body time to speak before the mind hijacks the scene. Watch what happens when you ask a question and then don't rush the answer. You'll see the inhale, the micro-freeze, the subtle adjustment. That adjustment is not random. It's the body deciding how safe it feels. Safety creates openness. Threat creates control. Uncertainty creates leakage. The body doesn't lie about these states. And once you start seeing them, you stop being confused by contradictions. You no longer get stuck wondering why someone's words feel wrong. You already know, because their body told you first. This skill changes how you move through the world. You stop arguing with people's narratives. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop taking explanations personally. Instead, you observe alignment. Do their words and body tell the same story? Or does one contradict the other? When there's alignment, trust feels easy. When there isn't, tension appears, even if you can't name it yet. That tension is data. Understanding this also changes how you manage your own presence. You become aware of what you are signaling before you speak. You realize how often your body gives away hesitation, defensiveness, or overinvestment. And instead of forcing confidence, you learn to regulate from the inside. You slow your breath, you ground your posture, you let your body settle before your mouth opens. This doesn't make you rigid, it makes you coherent. People respond differently to coherence. They feel safer, less defensive, more real. And when people feel safe or uncertain, but not pressured, they show themselves. The goal is not to control anyone. The goal is to see clearly, and clarity always starts before language. As you continue, remember this. Words are explanations. The body is evidence. If you learn to watch what happens before someone speaks, you'll understand what their words are trying to protect, hide, or reinforce. The body speaks first. The mind explains later. Once you train your attention to catch that first signal, you'll realize you were never missing information. You were just listening too late. Chapter 3. Eye contact. Comfort versus control. Eye contact is one of the most misunderstood signals in human interaction. Most people are taught a simple rule. Good eye contact means confidence. Bad eye contact means insecurity. But reality is more precise and far more revealing. Eye contact is not about confidence, it's about regulation. When someone holds your gaze comfortably, without stiffness or intensity, it usually means their internal state is settled. They are not managing fear. They are not performing dominance. They are simply present. But when eye contact becomes exaggerated, too fixed, too sharp, too deliberate, it often signals control, not confidence. The eyes don't just look. They manage distance. They decide how close someone feels, how exposed they feel, how much power is being negotiated in silence. That's why the quality of eye contact matters more than the duration. A calm gaze is flexible. It moves naturally. It breaks and returns without tension. A controlling gaze is rigid. It holds too long. It dares rather than connects. And an avoidant gaze isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's protection. The mistake most people make is interpreting eye behavior in isolation. They see avoidance and assume fear. They see intensity and assume strength. But context changes everything. Someone avoiding eye contact while relaxed in their body may simply be reflective, private, or conserving energy. Someone locking eyes while tense in their posture may be asserting control because they feel threatened. The eyes are rarely lying, but they are always responding to something. This is where silence becomes essential again. When words stop, eye behavior becomes clearer. Without conversation to manage, people reveal how comfortable they are being seen. Watch what happens when a conversation pauses. Does their gaze soften? Do they look away briefly, then return? Or do they stare, waiting for you to fill the space? Each response carries information. Comfortable people don't fear gaps in connection. They don't rush to secure your attention. They trust the moment. Insecure or controlling people often struggle here. They either break eye contact too quickly to avoid exposure, or they hold it too long to dominate the silence. Neither is accidental. Eye contact also changes when truth is nearby. When someone approaches a sensitive subject, you may notice micro-shifts, blinking increases, gaze drops, or eyes flick sideways. These movements happen before words adjust. The mind hasn't caught up yet. This doesn't automatically mean deception. It often means conflict between what they feel and what they plan to say. Truth creates friction, and friction shows up in the eyes. Another common misunderstanding is believing that people who avoid eye contact are hiding something from you. Often, they're hiding something from themselves. Eye contact brings awareness. Avoidance reduces it. That's why some people look away when emotions rise. Not to deceive you, but to regulate themselves. Understanding this prevents misjudgment. It keeps you from labeling too quickly. Observation without assumption is what separates insight from paranoia. There's also a deeper layer. Eye contact reveals how someone relates to power. People who feel secure don't need to dominate visually. They allow eye contact to breathe. They don't chase it or resist it. People who feel powerless may either submit visually, looking down, or overcompensate with intensity. Neither behavior is chosen consciously. The eyes are negotiating status long before words do. Once you start noticing this, you'll feel shifts in conversations you never noticed before. You'll sense when someone is aligning with you, when they're resisting, when they're guarding territory. And just as important, you'll notice your own habits. Do you look away when you feel exposed? Do you stare when you feel challenged? Do you seek eye contact to be reassured? These patterns reveal where your nervous system reacts to connection. Learning to regulate your own gaze is part of emotional discipline. Not forcing eye contact, not avoiding it, but allowing it to match your internal calm. When your gaze is relaxed, people feel less threatened, less judged, less pressured to perform, and in that safety, they reveal more. This is why interrogations fail and quiet presence succeeds. Pressure activates defense. Calm presence invites truth. Eye contact is not about staring someone down. It's about letting them be seen without force. When you pair steady silence with relaxed eye contact, something powerful happens. People either soften or expose where they can't. Both outcomes give you clarity. Remember this as you move forward. The eyes don't tell you everything, but they tell you how safe the truth feels. And once you can read that, you stop needing words to confirm what you already see. You understand the difference between comfort and control. Not because someone told you, but because their eyes showed you first. Chapter 4. Micro-reactions. You're ignoring. Most of what people reveal never reaches the level of expression you're taught to notice. It doesn't show up as a statement. It doesn't announce itself as emotion. It appears and disappears in fractions of a second. A tightening of the jaw, a flicker in the eyes, a brief inhale that doesn't match the moment. These are micro-reactions, and they are some of the most honest signals a person gives. They happen too fast to control. Before the mind can intervene, the body reacts. And if you're paying attention, not trying to analyze, not trying to judge, you catch them. Most people don't. They're waiting for something obvious, a change in tone, a dramatic gesture, a contradiction in words. But the truth often slips through quietly, in movements so small they're easy to dismiss. And that's why they matter. Micro-reactions occur at the moment of contact, when a stimulus touches something internal, a topic, a name, a memory, a suggestion. The nervous system registers it immediately. The body responds. Then the mind steps in to smooth things over. If you only pay attention after the smoothing, you miss the signal. This is especially important when silence is present. When no one is speaking, the body has less cover. It can't hide behind language or distraction. That's when micro-reactions are clearest. Watch what happens when you mention a specific subject and then stop talking. Not what they say next, but what happens before they speak. A micro-freeze, a subtle shift in posture, a quick swallow. These responses don't tell you what someone is thinking in detail, but they tell you where the emotional charge is. And emotional charge is always relevant. People are skilled at managing big reactions. They know how to hide anger, fear, or excitement once it's fully formed. But micro-reactions slip through because they're not planned. They're reflexive. This is why emotionally reactive people struggle to read them. When your attention is noisy, when you're thinking about what to say, how to respond, how you're being perceived, you miss the quiet signals. Stillness sharpens perception. The calmer you are, the more these micro-reactions stand out. You begin to notice how people respond not to questions, but to implications, not to statements, but to what those statements threaten or reveal. A person may agree verbally while their face briefly tightens. They may say, "That's fine," while their breath shortens. They may nod while their eyes harden for an instant. None of these mean deception by default, but they indicate internal friction. Something inside them didn't align, and friction is where understanding begins. The mistake is trying to interpret too much too quickly. Micro-reactions are not answers. They're markers. They tell you where to slow down, where to observe further, where not to push. They help you avoid blind spots. When you ignore micro-reactions, you rely entirely on surface behavior. And surface behavior is easy to manage. People can rehearse it, they can perform it, they can use it to mislead, even without malicious intent. Micro-reactions bypass performance. They are brief moments when the mask slips, not because the person wants it to, but because the nervous system fired before permission was given. This doesn't make you superior, it makes you informed. But there's a responsibility that comes with this awareness. If you use these signals to pressure, corner, or manipulate, you lose clarity. Pressure activates defense. Defense hides information. The moment you push, the system closes. The purpose of noticing micro-reactions is not to exploit them. It's to respect the information they offer. They tell you when to pause, when to change topics, when to give space, when to remain silent. Silence, again, plays a critical role here. When you don't react to micro-reactions, when you don't comment on them or chase explanations, people relax. They assume they weren't noticed. And in that safety, more signals appear naturally. Understanding deepens without confrontation. You begin to see patterns instead of moments. The same reaction appearing again and again around similar topics. The same tension arising with certain people. The same softening when pressure is removed. Patterns don't lie. This also turns the lens inward. You start noticing your own micro-reactions, the moments you tense, avoid, or prepare to defend. And instead of judging yourself, you learn where your own unresolved edges live. This awareness builds emotional maturity. You stop being surprised by your reactions. You stop being ruled by them. You learn to regulate before they turn into behavior. Micro-reactions are not flaws. They are signals. They show you what matters, what threatens, what resonates. And once you train yourself to notice them, quietly, calmly, without interpretation, you stop being confused by people. You don't need them to explain themselves. Their body already did. Chapter 5. The Psychology of Personal Space. Before a person speaks, they choose a distance. That distance is not random. It is psychological. Personal space is one of the clearest, least discussed signals of how someone feels, about you, about themselves, and about the situation they're in. It operates quietly, constantly, and almost entirely outside conscious awareness. People think of personal space as a cultural habit, and culture does shape it. But beneath culture is something more basic. Regulation. The body adjusts distance to manage comfort, safety, and control. When someone feels at ease, their space softens. They allow closeness without tension. Their body doesn't brace. Their posture remains open, even when proximity increases. When someone feels threatened, emotionally or psychologically, their space hardens. They step back, they angle their body, they place objects between you and them, a chair, a table, a phone, anything that creates a boundary. These movements are rarely deliberate. They are automatic responses to internal states. Most people ignore them because they happen gradually. A step back here, a shift to the side there. Nothing dramatic, but these small adjustments reveal exactly how safe or unsafe someone feels. And silence magnifies this information. When no one is talking, People become more aware of distance. Without words to fill the space, proximity feels louder. The body responds more honestly. Notice what happens when a conversation pauses. Does the other person lean in slightly, comfortable with closeness? Or do they increase distance, even subtly? Do they turn their torso away while keeping their face toward you? These choices tell you where their boundaries are. Personal space also reveals power dynamics. People who feel secure don't need excessive space. They don't protect territory aggressively. They can allow closeness without losing composure. People who feel uncertain may create distance to regain control. Space becomes a way to stabilize themselves. This doesn't make them weak. It makes them human. Understanding this prevents misinterpretation. Instead of assuming rejection or disinterest, you see regulation in action. You understand that distance is often about comfort, not judgment. There's another layer most people miss: inconsistent spacing. Pay attention to how someone adjusts distance with different people, who they allow close, who they keep at arm's length, who they unconsciously block with objects or posture. These differences are not accidents. They reveal trust, familiarity, attraction, or defensiveness. And you don't need to ask about any of it. You simply observe. Personal space also changes with topic. Someone may sit comfortably near you while discussing neutral subjects, then subtly pull away when the conversation shifts towards something personal. That shift marks a boundary. Respecting that boundary builds trust. Violating it creates resistance. This is where silence becomes a form of intelligence. When you notice space tightening, you don't push. You pause. You allow the body to recalibrate. Often when pressure is removed, space relaxes again. Pushing through boundaries, physically or emotionally, never reveals truth. It activates defense, and defense hides information. This awareness also turns inward. You begin to notice your own spatial habits, how close you stand when you're eager, how far you step back when you feel exposed, how you use objects to protect yourself without realizing it. Becoming conscious of this doesn't mean forcing yourself to stand closer or farther. It means regulating your comfort first. When you feel settled, your spacing becomes natural. People respond to that. They sense when proximity is calm rather than invasive. They relax into it, and in that relaxation, honesty increases. Personal space is not about invasion or retreat. It's about alignment. When distance matches emotional comfort, interactions flow. When it doesn't, tension appears, and tension is always a signal. The key is not to control distance, but to read it. If someone steps back, you don't follow. If they lean in, you don't retreat. You let their body set the rhythm. This communicates respect without words, and respect opens more doors than pressure ever could. As you move forward, remember this. People may tell you they're open. They may say they're comfortable. They may insist nothing is wrong, but their body has already chosen how close it wants to be. That choice is honest. When you learn to read personal space, quietly, patiently, without judgment, you stop misunderstanding people. You stop taking distance personally. You stop confusing boundaries with rejection. You see the truth for what it is, a nervous system managing itself in real time. And once you understand that, you understand people more clearly than words ever allow. Chapter 6. Stillness versus nervous energy. The difference between stillness and nervous energy is not subtle, but most people never learn how to see it. They confuse movement with confidence. They mistake activity for presence. They assume that someone who talks more, gestures more, reacts faster, must be more engaged, more powerful, more certain. In reality, the opposite is often true. Stillness is not the absence of energy. It is contained energy. Nervous energy is energy without containment. It leaks through movement, speech, and reaction. It shows up as restlessness, fidgeting, over-explaining, shifting posture, tapping fingers, constant adjustment. The body is trying to regulate itself and failing. Stillness, on the other hand, signals regulation. The nervous system is settled enough that it doesn't need to discharge excess tension through motion. The body stays quiet because it feels safe. This distinction matters deeply when you're trying to understand people without words. A person with nervous energy is often trying to manage uncertainty. They may not even know what they're anxious about, but their body knows. And it keeps moving to relieve internal pressure. A person who is still is not frozen. They are grounded. Their movements are minimal because they are deliberate. Watch how someone responds when a conversation shifts unexpectedly. Does their body settle or scatter? Nervous energy increases under pressure. You'll see faster movements, higher speech tempo, more gestures, more self-touching. These are not habits, they are regulation attempts. Stillness increases clarity. When someone remains physically calm in uncertain moments, it tells you something important. They are not scrambling for control. They are not threatened by silence. They are not dependent on immediate feedback. This is why still people often feel intimidating, not because they are aggressive, but because they are unreadable to those who rely on noise to orient themselves. Stillness removes the familiar signals people use to predict behavior, and unpredictability creates discomfort. But discomfort is revealing. People respond differently to stillness depending on their internal state. Some soften, some talk more, some grow defensive, some become unusually transparent. Stillness doesn't force these reactions. It allows them. This is why calm presence is more powerful than confrontation. When you don't mirror nervous energy, you become a reference point. The other person's behavior stands out against your steadiness. You see what belongs to them, not to the situation. Nervous energy often masquerades as enthusiasm or confidence, but it has a particular texture. It feels rushed, it lacks rhythm, it doesn't pause naturally. Stillness has rhythm. A still person moves when it's time to move, speaks when there's something to say, pauses without anxiety. Their actions feel measured, not suppressed. This difference becomes especially clear in silence. When words stop, nervous energy spikes. People shift, cough, laugh, check their phone, fill space. Silence becomes something to escape. Still, people don't escape silence. They inhabit it. They let it exist without needing to change it. That ability alone tells you a great deal about someone's emotional maturity. But there's another layer, your own state. You cannot accurately read nervous energy if you are nervous yourself. Reactivity distorts perception. When your system is activated, everything feels louder, faster, more urgent than it actually is. This is why emotional discipline precedes insight. Learning to regulate your own energy, slowing your breath, grounding your posture, allowing pauses, sharpens your perception. You become sensitive to subtle shifts instead of being overwhelmed by surface noise. And once you feel the difference between stillness and nervous energy in yourself, you recognize it instantly in others. You no longer mistake intensity for truth. You no longer confuse speed with certainty. You no longer assume volume equals power. You see containment, and containment is rare. People with containment don't need to convince you of anything. They don't rush to fill space. They don't overreact. They don't chase validation. They wait, and in waiting, they gather information. Nervous energy, by contrast, leaks information constantly. It reveals what someone is avoiding, what they're protecting, where they feel exposed. This is not something to judge. It's something to understand. When you stop reacting to nervous energy, when you don't mirror it, don't soothe it, don't escalate it, people often settle on their own. Or they don't. Both outcomes teach you something real. Stillness is not passive, it is observant. It allows truth to surface without force. As you continue, remember this: the person who can remain still in uncertain moments is the person who sees the most. Because while others are burning energy to manage discomfort, they are watching, and nothing reveals the truth faster than that. Chapter 7. Emotional Leakage. No one can fully contain what they feel. Even the most controlled person leaks. Emotions are not concepts. They are physiological events. They move through the nervous system, create pressure, and demand release. When expression is blocked by politeness, fear, strategy, or self-image, that pressure finds another way out. This is emotional leakage. It doesn't appear as confession. It appears as tone, as timing, as small inconsistencies that don't match the words being spoken. People think they're hiding their emotions when they keep their voice calm or their language neutral. But emotion does not require language. It requires movement. And if it can't move through speech, it moves through something else. A forced smile that doesn't reach the eyes. A sudden sharpness in an otherwise polite sentence. A sigh that comes too early or too late. A pause that lingers where it shouldn't. These are not accidents. They are the body releasing excess emotional energy while the mind insists everything is fine. This is why emotional leakage is most visible during moments of restraint. When someone is trying to be composed, respectful, professional, or agreeable, the contrast between control and pressure becomes sharper. The tighter the grip, the more noticeable the leak. Silence again plays a critical role. When conversation slows, emotional leakage becomes louder. Without words to distract or redirect attention, small shifts carry more weight. A change in breathing, a subtle exhale, a tightening around the mouth. These moments reveal not just what someone feels, but what they're trying not to feel. And that distinction matters. Someone who openly expresses emotion is not leaking. They're releasing. Leakage happens when emotion is denied or suppressed. That's why emotionally honest people often feel easier to read. There's less contradiction between what they feel and what they show. Their signals align. But when alignment breaks, leakage appears. Most people miss this because they focus on content. They listen to explanations. They analyze logic. They try to understand people through meaning instead of energy. But emotional energy doesn't lie. It only changes form. You'll notice leakage most clearly when words and emotion disagree. A person says they don't care, but their voice tightens. They say they're calm, but their movements become sharp. They insist they're fine, but their breathing becomes shallow. These contradictions are not deliberate. They are involuntary. And they don't mean someone is bad or deceptive. They mean someone is human. Understanding emotional leakage prevents you from being confused by mixed signals. Instead of asking, why do they say one thing and do another? You understand that the body and mind are not in agreement yet. That knowledge gives you patience. It also protects you. When you learn to recognize emotional leakage, you stop taking emotional undercurrents personally. You see when tension belongs to the other person's internal conflict, not to you. This prevents unnecessary escalation. If you respond to leakage with pressure, the system tightens further. Defense increases. Honesty retreats. If you respond with steadiness and silence, something else happens. The body relaxes. When emotional pressure no longer needs to be managed externally, it often resolves internally. The leak slows. The person either regains coherence or reveals more. Again, both outcomes are informative. There's also a darker side to emotional leakage, one that becomes clear over time. People who chronically suppress emotion leak it in patterns: sarcasm, passive aggression, chronic irritability, subtle contempt. These are not personality traits. They are unresolved emotional pressure expressed indirectly. Recognizing this helps you avoid mislabeling people. You see behavior as expression, not identity. And just as important, You begin to notice your own leakage. The moments when your tone shifts unexpectedly. When you feel irritation rise without a clear reason. When you withdraw instead of responding. These are not failures. They are signals. When you learn to observe your own emotional leakage without judgment, you gain self-awareness. You stop being surprised by your reactions. You stop letting them control your behavior. This is emotional discipline, not suppression, but recognition. People who understand emotional leakage don't demand explanations. They don't force clarity. They allow time. Time plus safety resolves more emotional tension than confrontation ever could. As you move forward, remember this. People may manage their words carefully. They may present a controlled image. They may believe they're hiding everything that matters. But emotion always finds a way out. It leaks through tone, timing, posture, and silence. And once you learn to notice it, quietly, calmly, without reaction, you no longer get lost in what people say. You understand what they're carrying. And that understanding changes everything. Chapter 8. Patterns matter more than moments. Most people try to understand others by focusing on moments, a single comment, one reaction, a particular look or tone, and then they draw conclusions. This is how misunderstanding begins. Human behavior is not a snapshot. It is a sequence. A moment can be misleading. Stress, fatigue, distraction, or context can distort behavior temporarily. Anyone can act out of character once. Anyone can misstep. But patterns don't lie. A pattern is behavior repeated under similar conditions. It reveals what is stable, not what is situational. And stability is where truth lives. This is why experienced observers don't rush to interpret. They wait. They collect data over time. They notice what repeats. Silence is essential here. When you don't react strongly to individual moments, when you don't confront, accuse, or demand explanations, people continue behaving naturally. They don't feel the need to correct or perform. Patterns emerge. You begin to see who consistently avoids certain topics, who becomes tense around specific people, who relaxes only in certain environments, who always rushes to fill silence, who repeatedly over-explains when not challenged. These repetitions tell you far more than any isolated incident ever could. The problem with focusing on moments is emotional reactivity. When something surprises or irritates you, your nervous system activates. You seek meaning immediately. You want resolution, but urgency narrows perception. It forces you to explain before you understand. Pattern recognition requires patience. It requires emotional control. You have to tolerate uncertainty long enough for behavior to reveal itself. This is difficult for people who crave clarity quickly, but clarity earned slowly is far more accurate. Consider how people respond to boundaries. In a single moment, someone might respect a boundary because they're in a good mood or because others are watching. But patterns reveal whether that respect is genuine. Do they consistently adjust their behavior, or do they test the boundary again later? Do they comply outwardly but express irritation elsewhere? Patterns answer questions moments cannot. The same applies to honesty. A single truthful statement doesn't make someone honest. A single inconsistency doesn't make someone deceptive. But repeated alignment or misalignment between words and behavior forms a pattern. That pattern becomes predictable, and predictability is not about control. It's about safety. When you can anticipate behavior based on pattern, you stop being surprised. You stop making excuses. You stop rationalizing red flags or idealizing isolated positives. You see the person as they are. This also prevents overinterpretation. Instead of obsessing over what something meant, you ask a quieter question. Does this keep happening? If it does, it matters. Silence helps you stay neutral while patterns form. When you don't comment on every shift, people don't feel scrutinized. They continue acting naturally. and natural behavior is honest behavior. Another reason patterns matter is emotional leakage. As you've learned, people leak emotions when they suppress them. Those leaks repeat. The same sarcasm, the same defensiveness, the same withdrawal. Over time, you see emotional structure. You see where someone feels threatened, where they feel insecure, where they feel entitled, where they feel safe. This knowledge allows you to respond strategically instead of emotionally. You stop reacting to noise. You respond to structure. Patterns also protect you from projection. When you focus on moments, your own mood and history influence interpretation. You read meaning into behavior based on your fears or hopes. Patterns reduce that bias. They ground your understanding in observation rather than imagination. This is why stillness and silence are foundational. Without them, you don't stay present long enough to see repetition. You get pulled into the drama of the moment. With them, you remain anchored. You also begin to notice your own patterns, how you respond to silence, how you react to uncertainty, how you repeat behaviors in similar situations. This self-observation is uncomfortable, but necessary. It reveals where you are predictable, where you are reactive, where you are avoiding something. Awareness of your own patterns increases empathy. You judge less, you understand more. And with understanding comes choice. As you move forward, remember this. Moments can mislead. Patterns clarify. Anyone can perform once. No one can perform consistently without revealing themselves. If you want to understand people without words, don't chase moments. Watch what repeats. Let time do the work. Let silence hold the space. The truth will show itself. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. And once you see the pattern, you won't need confirmation. You'll already know. Chapter 9. Why calm people? More calmness is not a personality trait. It is a nervous system state, and that state determines how much of reality you are able to perceive. When the nervous system is activated by fear, excitement, urgency, or the need to impress, attention narrows. The mind focuses on threats, outcomes, and self-protection. Perception collapses inward. You see less, not because there is less to see, but because your system is busy managing itself. This is why anxious people miss obvious signals, why emotionally reactive people misread intentions, why those who crave approval often misunderstand others. Their attention is not free. Calm people are different. Because they are not busy regulating internal chaos, their attention remains available. They notice subtleties, shifts in tone, changes in posture, the timing of reactions. They don't need to scan for danger. They don't need to rush for certainty. They can afford to observe. Calm creates bandwidth. This is the hidden advantage of emotional regulation. It's not about appearing composed. It's about having enough internal space to take in information without distortion. When you're calm, silence doesn't feel threatening. It feels neutral. That neutrality allows you to remain present instead of reactive. And presence sharpens perception. You begin to see how people respond when they're not being managed. You notice what happens when expectations drop, when pressure is removed, when nothing is demanded. These are the moments when truth surfaces. Calm people also resist the urge to resolve ambiguity too quickly. They can sit with uncertainty without filling it with assumptions. They wait for clarity to arrive through behavior, not speculation. This patience is rare. Most people confuse quick conclusions with intelligence. They think certainty equals strength, but premature certainty often comes from discomfort, not insight. Calm people don't need immediate answers. They trust time. They allow information to unfold. This doesn't make them passive. It makes them accurate. Another reason calm people see more is that they don't provoke defensive responses. Emotional intensity triggers protection. Calm presence disarms it. When someone feels safe, they reveal more, not intentionally, but naturally. Their body relaxes. Their behavior becomes less guarded. Their patterns become visible. Calm is contagious. When you regulate yourself, others often mirror that regulation unconsciously. Conversations slow, reactions soften, noise decreases. And in that quiet, details emerge. This is why calm individuals often seem insightful without effort. They're not forcing understanding, they're allowing it. There's also a paradox here. Calm people don't try to read others. They don't scan for meaning aggressively. They're not hunting for signals. They simply notice. Intentional analysis can actually block perception. When you're actively trying to decode someone, you're no longer present. You're in your head. You miss what's happening in real time. Calm keeps you embodied. It anchors you in the moment, where information is available. This is why stillness, silence, and calm form a system. Each supports the others. Together, they create conditions where truth is difficult to hide. But this comes at a cost. Calm people are often misunderstood. Their lack of urgency can be mistaken for disinterest. Their silence can be misread as judgment. Their refusal to react can unsettle those who rely on emotional cues. But calm is not coldness, it is steadiness, and steadiness sees clearly. Developing calm is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression increases internal pressure and eventually backfires. Calm comes from allowing emotion without letting it control behavior. It comes from breathing through discomfort, from slowing down responses, from choosing observation over reaction. This practice takes time, but its effects compound. As you become calmer, you become harder to manipulate. Not because you resist people, but because you are not easily pulled out of center. You stop reacting to emotional hooks. You stop being rushed into decisions. You stop mistaking intensity for truth. And in that stability, understanding deepens. People show you who they are when you don't chase them, challenge them, or try to manage them. They reveal themselves when nothing is demanded. Calm creates that space. As you approach the final chapter, hold on to this principle. The mind that is not at war with itself has room to see others clearly. Calm is not weakness. It is perception unclouded. And once you experience how much more you notice from that state, you'll understand why those who see the most are often the ones who say the least. Chapter 10. How to stay silent and let others reveal themselves. Silence is not the absence of action. It is a deliberate position. Most people speak because they feel something rising inside them, an urge to clarify, defend, impress, connect, or relieve discomfort. They confuse expression with control. They believe that if they don't say something, they'll lose the moment. In reality, silence often creates the moment. When you stay silent, you remove pressure, and when pressure disappears, people behave more honestly. This is the final and most difficult skill, not just noticing silence, but holding it. Holding silence means resisting the impulse to fill space. It means allowing pauses to exist without rescuing them. It means staying grounded when others grow restless. This doesn't come naturally. Silence exposes your own internal reactions. It brings awareness to your need for validation, certainty, or approval. That's why most people avoid it. But once you learn to remain steady, silence becomes an invitation for others to continue, to explain more, to justify, to reveal. People tend to reveal themselves when they believe they're not being evaluated. Silence creates that illusion. Without immediate feedback, they don't know how they're being perceived. So they fill the gap, and what they fill it with is rarely strategic. They talk too much. They overcorrect. They contradict themselves. They expose priorities they didn't intend to share. This is not manipulation. It's human nature. Silence removes the mirror people use to adjust their behavior. Without your reactions, they lose reference points, and in that uncertainty, their default patterns surface. The key is how you stay silent. Silence paired with tension feels like judgment. Silence paired with calm feels like safety. Your posture matters, your breathing matters, your gaze matters. If you hold silence with rigidity, people sense threat. They shut down or become defensive. But if your silence is relaxed, open posture, steady breath, neutral expression, it signals presence, not pressure. This kind of silence invites continuation. You'll notice it in conversations when someone stops speaking and looks at you, expecting a response. Instead of jumping in, you simply wait. Not coldly, not challengingly, just present. Often, they'll continue on their own. They'll clarify what they meant. They'll add details they didn't plan to share. They'll expose uncertainty. These additions are rarely rehearsed. They're spontaneous attempts to regain balance, and spontaneity reveals truth. Another powerful use of silence is after someone says something important. Most people rush to respond. They want to show understanding. They want to agree, disagree, or move on. But when you pause instead, when you let their words hang, something interesting happens. They reflect on what they just said. Sometimes they soften it. Sometimes they intensify it. Sometimes they retract it. Sometimes they double down. Each response gives you insight into how they relate to their own words. Silence also prevents escalation. When emotions rise, speaking often adds fuel. Silence, when calm, allows intensity to burn itself out. People either regulate themselves or reveal that they can't. Both outcomes are informative. This doesn't mean never speaking. It means choosing when speech adds value and when it interferes. The mistake is using silence as a tactic instead of a state. If you're silent while internally agitated, people feel it. The body communicates tension even when the mouth is closed. True silence comes from regulation, not restraint. That's why the previous chapters matter. Stillness, calm, pattern recognition, emotional awareness. They prepare you to hold silence without strain. When silence becomes natural, not forced, it stops feeling like a technique. It becomes part of your presence, and presence is what reveals people. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You won't need to ask many questions. You won't need to press for answers. You'll receive information simply by allowing space. People will tell you what matters to them, what threatens them, what they avoid, what they protect. Not because you demanded it, but because silence gave them room to speak. This skill changes how you listen. You stop listening for content and start listening for movement. You hear where energy rises, where it stalls, where it leaks. You also become more selective with your own words. You speak less, but more precisely. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop filling silence to ease your own discomfort. This shifts power quietly. Not power over others, but power within yourself. You no longer rush to be understood. You no longer chase clarity. You allow understanding to come to you. And it does. Silence is not emptiness. It is a mirror. When you learn to stand comfortably in front of it, others can't help but see themselves more clearly. And in that reflection, the truth reveals itself, without a single word being spoken. Understanding people was never meant to be loud. It was never about clever questions, persuasive words, or forcing clarity out of others. The deepest understanding has always belonged to those who know how to wait, those who can remain present without needing to control the moment. Throughout this audiobook, one principle has quietly repeated itself. Truth does not need to be chased. It emerges when space is allowed. Silence is not a void. It is a field of information. When you slow down, when you regulate your own reactions, when you stop filling every pause, you begin to notice what most people miss. The body speaking before the mind. the eyes negotiating comfort and control. Micro-reactions surfacing before words arrive. Emotional leakage slipping through restraint. Patterns revealing what moments cannot. None of this requires confrontation. None of it requires suspicion. It requires steadiness. As you've seen, calmness is not passivity. It is readiness. It keeps your perception clear instead of distorted by urgency, fear, or desire for approval. From that state, you stop misreading intensity as truth. You stop confusing noise with meaning. You learn to trust what you observe over what you're told. This shift changes more than how you understand others. It changes how you relate to yourself. You become aware of your own signals, your own habits of filling silence, over-explaining, reacting too quickly. And instead of judging those tendencies, you learn to regulate them. You pause, you breathe, you allow space. In that space, clarity returns. You no longer feel the need to decode every interaction. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop questioning your intuition. You understand that clarity doesn't come from more information. It comes from less interference. Silence removes interference. This doesn't make you distant or cold. In fact, it often makes you more grounded and approachable. People feel safer around those who aren't trying to extract something from them. Safety invites authenticity, and authenticity reveals truth. You'll notice that as you practice this, conversations change. People talk more freely around you. They explain themselves without being asked. They reveal priorities, insecurities, and intentions naturally. You don't need to expose anyone. They expose themselves. This is not about gaining advantage over others. It's about gaining freedom from confusion. When you see clearly, you stop being pulled into unnecessary drama. You stop investing energy where it isn't returned. You stop mistaking surface behavior for substance. You choose better. You respond instead of react. You move with discernment. And perhaps most importantly, you learn when not to engage. Not every truth needs to be addressed. Not every revelation requires action. Sometimes understanding is enough. Sometimes the clearest move is distance, not dialogue. Silence teaches you that too. As you carry this forward, remember that mastery here is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't impress rooms. But it changes outcomes quietly. You'll notice it in how little you need to say, in how often others fill the space for you, in how rarely you feel confused by people's behavior. The world is loud, opinions are constant, explanations are endless. But truth is quiet, and those who know how to listen to silence are rarely surprised by what they discover. You now have that skill, not as a technique, not as a trick, but as a way of being. Stay calm. Stay present. Let space do the work. The more silent you become inside, the clearer everything outside becomes. And once you've seen that, you'll never need words to understand again.